The crystal champagne flute shattered against marble floor as Kenji Takahashi's voice thundered through the Aurelia Hotel's grand ballroom. Daraga nihongo ohana semasuka. His face twisted with fury veins pulsing at his temples. The Manhattan elite froze million-dollar deals hanging by a thread, no translator in sight. Then, from the shadows where servants were meant to stay invisible, a young woman in a housekeeping uniform stepped forward. She bowed deep, her voice cutting through the chaos like silk. Takahashi-sama watashi ga otetsudai itashimasu. The room gasped. The maid had just spoken perfect Japanese. Welcome to a story that will shatter every assumption you've ever had about power dignity and who truly deserves respect. I'm about to take you inside the most explosive corporate showdown Manhattan has ever witnessed, where a billionaire's rage met a housekeeper's hidden brilliance. Stay with me until the very end because what happens in that ballroom changes everything. And hey, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's dive into the moment that turned New York's elite upside down. The September rain hammered against the towering windows of the Aurelia Hotel, each drop racing down the glass like tears on a giant's face. Nina Vaugh pressed her palm against the service elevator's cold metal wall, steadying herself as it climbed toward the 47th floor. The thunderstorm outside matched the storm brewing in her chest. Tonight's event would host 300 of Manhattan's most powerful people, and she'd be invisible among them, just another pair of hands carrying trays. "Nina, you listening?" Rita's gravelly voice snapped her back to the present. The veteran server stood beside her, silver hair pulled into a tight bun that had survived 30 years of banquet service. "When we hit that floor, you keep your head down. These people, they're different tonight." "Different how?" Nina adjusted her pressed uniform, the collar so stiff it scratched her neck. "The Takahashi Industries merger. Biggest green tech deal of the decade. That Japanese billionaire, he's got half of Wall Street sweating bullets." Rita's eyes narrowed. "And when rich people sweat, they get mean." The elevator dinged. 47th floor. The doors opened to controlled chaos. The Aurelia's grand ballroom stretched before them like a golden ocean, crystal chandeliers casting diamonds of light across silk-covered tables. The service corridor buzzed with activity servers weaving between carts loaded with champagne, kitchen staff barking orders in 3 languages, the house band tuning instruments behind thick velvet curtains. "Vaugh!" Cheryl Kwan's voice sliced through the noise like a blade. The front-of-house manager materialized from behind a towering flower arrangement, her pencil skirt so tight it looked painful. "Your uniform." Nina glanced down. "Is something wrong with the crease?" Cheryl pointed at Nina's sleeve with a manicured nail sharp enough to draw blood. "Right there. Unacceptable." The crease was barely visible, a shadow of a wrinkle that wouldn't be noticed from 2 feet away, let alone across a ballroom. But Nina had learned in her 6 months at the Aurelia that Cheryl Kwan didn't see employees, she saw potential embarrassments. "Fix it. Now. The VIPs arrive in 20 minutes, and I won't have you making us look like some third-rate establishment." Cheryl's eyes swept over Nina with the kind of disgust usually reserved for something stuck to the bottom of a shoe. Why they let housekeeping help with events I'll never understand. Nina bit the inside of her cheek, a habit from childhood that left permanent scars only she knew about. "Yes, Ms. Kwan, Ms." Rita waited until Cheryl click-clacked away on her Louboutins before muttering, "That woman's got ice where her heart should be." In the service prep room, Nina ran a hot iron over her sleeve while Miguel loaded champagne flutes onto a cart. The dishwasher-turned backup server caught her eye in the mirror. "You okay?" "Fine." The word came out sharper than intended. "Hey." Miguel set down a glass carefully. We all know what Cheryl is. Don't let her. I said I'm fine. But she wasn't. As the iron hissed against fabric, Nina's mind drifted to another life lecture halls in Tokyo professors who called her brilliant job offers from firms that moved billions across borders. All abandoned for this carrying trays for people who looked through her like glass. You chose this, she reminded herself. You chose to disappear. Showtime, someone called from the corridor. Nina hung up the iron and checked her reflection. The crease was gone, but the weight in her chest remained. She picked up her assigned tray, 12 champagne flutes arranged in perfect symmetry, and joined the stream of servers heading toward the ballroom. The space had transformed in her brief absence. Soft jazz floated from hidden speakers while the hired band prepared for their later set. Executives in custom suits clustered near the windows, their laughter sharp and practiced. Women in gowns that cost more than Nina's annual salary air-kissed and whispered behind jeweled hands. Positions. Gavin Pierce, the catering captain, strutted through the service lane like a rooster in a foxhouse. His slicked-back hair gleamed under the lights, and his smile never reached his eyes. Remember, you're invisible. They don't want to see you, hear you, or know you exist. You're furniture that moves. Nina took her position near the east wall tray, balanced on her palm. The weight was familiar, almost comforting. She'd learned to find meditation in the stance spine, straight shoulders back, breath steady. It was like holding a yoga pose, except she was holding Dom Perignon worth $400 a bottle. The main doors swept open. The room's energy shifted like a tide pulling back before a tsunami. Rex Dalton entered first, all 28 years of venture capital arrogance wrapped in a Tom Ford suit. His laugh boomed across the space as he glad-handed his way through the crowd, each handshake a small performance of dominance. Behind him, Marla Sloan glided in wearing Chanel, and a smile that had launched 1,000 PR campaigns and destroyed twice as many careers. "Va circulate," Gavin hissed as he passed. "Don't just stand there like a statue." Nina moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, offering champagne to hands that took glasses without acknowledging her existence. She'd perfected the art of being present, but absent there, but not there. It was exhausting in its simplicity. "Oh my God, perfect," Rex's voice cut through her concentration. He was standing with 3 other suits, all varying shades of entitled. "Hey, you Maid, get in here." Nina turned. Rex was holding up his phone, grinning like a shark who'd spotted blood. "I need you in this shot. Stand right there, no there. Behind us. It's hilarious, right? The help in the background. Very Downtown Abbey meets late capitalism." The men laughed. Nina stood frozen tray balanced as Rex snapped photos. "Make sure you look really serious," one of them added. "Like you're contemplating the champagne or something." More laughter. Nina's fingers tightened on the tray's edge, but her face remained neutral, another skill learned through repetition. She was a mirror that reflected nothing back. "That's perfect. So ironic." Rex waved her away like dismissing a dog. "You can go now." Nina turned and walked away, each step measured, controlled. But inside, something twisted tighter, a spring coiled to its breaking point. She made 3 more circuits of the room, refilling glasses for people deep in conversations about acquisitions and hostile takeovers, about summer homes in the Hamptons and winters in Gstaad. Her notebook tucked secretly in her uniform pocket, pressed against her hip, with each movement. 3 years of notes from Tokyo, from lectures on international finance, from internships at firms that shaped global markets, all reduced to this moment, carrying drinks for people who saw her as part of the decor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cheryl's voice rang out from the podium. "If you could begin taking your seats, our honored guest will be arriving momentarily." The crowd shifted toward the arranged tables like expensive schools of fish. Nina positioned herself along the wall with the other servers, maintaining regulation spacing 6 feet apart, backs straight, hands clasped. That's when she saw her. Aiko Taneda entered through the service door, not the main entrance. Takahashi's chief of staff moved with the kind of purpose that parted crowds without effort. She wore a simple black suit that somehow made everyone else look overdressed. Her eyes swept the room with surgical precision, cataloging faces, exits, potential problems. When her gaze passed over the service staff, it lingered on Nina for a fraction of a second. Nina's body moved before her mind caught up a deep bow precisely 30 degrees, hands placed just so. It was muscle memory from 3 years in Tokyo, from professors who'd insisted on proper etiquette, from a culture that understood respect as an art form. Aiko's eyebrow raised a millimeter. Then she was gone, moving toward the podium to check microphone levels. "What was that?" Rita whispered from her position 6 feet away. "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Nina's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd revealed something, shown a card she'd meant to keep hidden. The bow had been perfect, too perfect for a hotel housekeeper who'd supposedly never left New York. The main doors opened again. The room fell silent. Kenji Takahashi entered like a force of nature contained in a 5'7" frame. 60 years old, but moving with the energy of someone half his age, he commanded the space simply by existing in it. His suit was understated navy, not black, but the watch on his wrist could buy a brownstone in Brooklyn. His eyes missed nothing as they swept across the assembled crowd. "Mr. Takahashi?" Rex bounded forward, hand extended. "Rex Dalton, Apex Ventures. We're so thrilled to—" Takahashi walked past him without acknowledgement. Rex's hand hung in the air for a moment before he lowered it, his face flushing red. The billionaire moved directly to the podium, ignoring Cheryl's attempted greeting, bypassing Marla's calculated approach. He gripped the microphone and began speaking in rapid Japanese. The words flowed like water over rocks, smooth, powerful, unstoppable. Nina's breath caught. He wasn't giving pleasantries. He was discussing the merger, laying out terms with the complexity of a legal document and the precision of a surgical strike. Specific percentages, liability frameworks, environmental impact metrics that would reshape the American manufacturing landscape. The room stood frozen, confused smiles plastered on faces, eyes darting, searching for help. "Where's the translator?" someone whispered. "Running late," another voice responded. "Traffic from JFK." Takahashi's voice rose, his tone sharpening. He'd asked a question, Nina could hear it in the inflection. But the room stared back at him with blank, panicked faces. He asked again, louder this time. The Japanese words cracked like a whip across the silent ballroom. Cheryl's smile looked painted on as she stepped toward the podium. "Mr. Takahashi, I'm so sorry, but our translator seems to be—" He cut her off with a gesture, then spoke again. This time, Nina caught every word. "Is there not a single person in this room who speaks Japanese? You want to do business with my company, take my money, reshape your economy with our technology, but you cannot be bothered to learn our language. This is the respect you show." The fury in his voice needed no translation. Everyone could feel it. The disgust, the disappointment, the barely contained rage of a man who'd flown 14 hours to be insulted by unprepared Americans. Rex attempted damage control, his voice too loud and too cheerful. "Mr. Takahashi, I'm sure we can. Derga Nihongo ohana semasu ka?" Takahashi's voice exploded across the room. The champagne flute in Marla's hand slipped, shattering against the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Takahashi stepped back from the podium, his body language clear he was leaving. The deal was dead. Billions of dollars about to walk out the door because no one had bothered to prepare for the most basic aspect of international business communication. "Someone do something," Cheryl hissed at the service staff, as if they could materialize a translator from thin air. Nina's hand moved to her pocket, feeling the worn leather of her notebook. 3 years of notes. 3 years of studying under Professor Yamamoto, who'd insisted his students think in Japanese dream, in Japanese understand not just the language, but the culture it carried. 3 years of being told she had the best linguistic instincts he'd seen in a decade of teaching. All of it leading to this moment. She set down her tray with deliberate care, the soft clink drawing eyes in the silent room. Her feet moved without her permission, carrying her forward from the safety of the wall's shadow. What are you?" Gavin's harsh whisper died as she passed him. Nina walked through the space between the service area and the podium, a chasm that might as well have been an ocean. Every eye tracked her movement. Cheryl's face cycled through confusion, anger, and horror. When Nina reached the appropriate distance from Takahashi, not too close to presume familiarity, not too far to seem distant, she stopped. Then, with the precision of someone who'd practiced 10,000 times, she bowed. Deep, respectful, held for exactly 3 seconds. When she rose, she spoke in perfect Japanese, her voice carrying the soft Kyoto accent she'd learned from Professor Yamamoto. "Takahashi-sama, I offer my deepest apologies for this disrespect. With your permission, I would be honored to assist with translation." The room held its breath. Takahashi's eyes narrowed, studying her like a specimen under a microscope. The silence stretched 5 seconds, 10-15. "You work here?" he asked in Japanese, his tone skeptical. "Yes, Takahashi-sama. In housekeeping." "Housekeeping?" He said the word like he was tasting it, testing its flavor. "And you speak Japanese?" "I had the privilege of studying in Tokyo for 3 years, sir, at Keio University under Professor Yamamoto in the International Business Communication Program." A muscle in Takahashi's jaw twitched. "Yamamoto Hiroshi?" "Yes, sir. He was my professor. 30 years ago." Takahashi circled her slowly like a predator evaluating prey. "Tell me, housekeeper, what did Yamamoto-sensei always say about language?" Nina's spine straightened. This was a test, and she knew the answer because Professor Yamamoto had carved it into her memory. Language is not words. Language is culture, history, and intention made audible. To speak someone's language is to acknowledge their humanity. Takahashi stopped circling. For the first time since entering the room, something that might have been approval flickered across his face. "Your name?" "Nina Vo, sir." "Vietnamese. My parents are. I was born here." He nodded slowly, then gestured toward the podium. "Very well, Vo-san. Let us see if Yamamoto taught you as well as he taught me." Nina moved to a position where she could see both Takahashi and the audience. Her heart thundered so loud she was certain everyone could hear it, but her hands remained steady, her voice calm. Takahashi began speaking again, but this time his pace was measured, allowing for translation. He started with context, his company's 40-year history in sustainable manufacturing, their breakthrough in carbon-negative steel production, their vision for transforming American industry. Nina translated each phrase, but more than that, she conveyed the weight behind the words. When Takahashi spoke of innovation, she captured his passion. When he mentioned workers displaced by automation, she carried his genuine concern. She wasn't just converting language, she was building a bridge between two cultures that had been standing on opposite shores shouting at each other across the divide. "The terms I proposed," Takahashi continued, were not arbitrary numbers. Each percentage point represents jobs, real jobs for real families. Each environmental metric ties to our children's futures. But you sit here drinking champagne that costs more than most Americans make in a day, and you cannot even bother to understand my words. Nina translated it all, even the parts that made Rex shift uncomfortably in his seat, that caused Marla to set down her fresh glass of champagne. Mr. Takahashi is expressing concern, Rex interrupted, standing up, that perhaps we haven't shown adequate preparation. That is not what I said. Takahashi's English was accented, but clear. The room gasped. He'd understood everything all along. Vosan, please translate exactly what I said, not what Mr. Dalton wishes I had said. Nina felt the trap Rex had walked into. Takahashi had been testing everyone from the moment he'd walked in, and they'd all failed, except her. Mr. Takahashi said, and I quote, "You sit here drinking champagne that costs more than most Americans make in a day, and you cannot even bother to understand my words." Rex's face flushed purple. This is ridiculous. She's a maid, for Christ's sake. She probably memorized a few phrases. Then test her, Takahashi said in English, his voice deadly quiet. Ask her to translate something. Anything. Rex's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Then he pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Fine. There's this Japanese saying my Tokyo office keeps using. Translate this. He showed his phone to Nina, the screen displaying Yuan mo mu kara ochiru. Nina didn't hesitate. Saru mo ki kara ochiru. Even monkeys fall from trees. It means everyone makes mistakes, even experts in their field. She paused, then added with perfect neutrality. Your Tokyo office is probably trying to tell you something, Mr. Dalton. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Takahashi's stone face cracked, revealing the briefest smile. Continue with the presentation, he commanded in Japanese. For the next 20 minutes, Nina translated complex financial structures, environmental regulations, and technological specifications that would have challenged a professional interpreter. But she'd lived this language, breathed it, dreamed in it, during those years in Tokyo, when everyone said she was crazy to leave her family's expectations behind. The watershed technology, Takahashi explained, requires a specific kind of rare earth element. The supply chain vulnerability is our primary concern. As Nina translated, she noticed Aiko taking notes, occasionally nodding. When a particularly complex technical term came up, something about metallurgical bonds, that even Nina struggled with, she admitted it. My apologies, Takahashi-sama. The specific technical term is beyond my expertise. Perhaps if you could explain it differently. Honest, Takahashi murmured in English. Rare in this room. He explained the concept in simpler terms, and Nina continued. That's when Marla Sloan stood up, her PR mind clearly working overtime. This is fascinating, Mr. Takahashi, but surely we should wait for the professional translator. This young woman, while apparently talented, isn't qualified to handle such sensitive negotiations. Qualified. Takahashi turned to Marla. What makes someone qualified, Ms. Sloan? Well, credentials, experience, proper training. Vosan, Takahashi interrupted, switching back to Japanese. Translate this exactly, Ms. Sloan. You have 3 Harvard degrees, correct? And you've never waited tables, cleaned rooms, or washed dishes. Nina translated, watching Marla's confused nod. Then you are unqualified to judge her. She understands work, real work. The kind my company was built on. The kind America has forgotten to respect. He turned to Nina. Show them your hands. Nina hesitated, then held out her hands. They were workers' hands calluses from carrying trays, small scars from cleaning chemicals, nails cut short for practicality. "These hands," Takahashi announced in English, "are more qualified than any MBA. They know labor, they know service, they know humility." He switched back to Japanese. "Tell me, Vosan, why does someone who studied at Keio University work in housekeeping?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Nina could feel Cheryl's stare burning into her back, could sense the room's collective hunger for scandal. "With respect, Takahashi-sama," Nina replied in Japanese, "we all have our reasons for the paths we choose. I chose to learn humility before seeking authority." "And your family? They approved of this choice." Nina's composure cracked slightly, just a tremor in her voice that only someone listening closely would catch. "My family and I have different definitions of success." Takahashi studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Translate the rest of the proposal." As Nina continued, she could feel the room's energy shifting. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something else. Resentment from some curiosity from others, and from Cheryl, pure rage barely contained behind her professional smile. The technical portion of the presentation involved a joint venture structure that would bring thousands of jobs to the Rust Belt, but with strict environmental standards that many American companies would balk at. Nina translated it all, including Takahashi's pointed comments about American corporations prioritizing quarterly profits over generational responsibility. The facility in Cleveland, Takahashi explained, would require workers to undergo 6 months of training. Proper training, not the 2-week orientations you Americans call preparation. We would pay them during this training full wages, full benefits. "That's not standard practice here," Rex interjected. "The costs would be the costs." Nina translated as Takahashi responded, "Are an investment in human dignity. Or is that another foreign concept requiring translation?" Gavin chose that moment to assert his authority, stepping forward from his position along the wall. "Excuse me, Mr. Takahashi, but this staff member is needed for service duties. We have a professional translator en route." "No." Takahashi's single word in English stopped Gavin cold. "She stays." "Sir, I really must insist. The hotel has standards, protocols." "Your protocols." Takahashi's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the room. "Your standards, your insistence, all worth less than this woman's smallest finger. She stays or I leave. Choose." Gavin looked at Cheryl, who looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. Through gritted teeth, she nodded. Nina continued translating, but she could feel the undercurrents in the room, alliances shifting, judgments forming, plans being made. She caught Miguel and Rita exchanging looks of amazement from their positions. She saw Aiko typing rapidly on her tablet, occasionally glancing up at Nina with an expression that might have been recognition. "The carbon capture technology," Takahashi continued, "is not theoretical. We have working prototypes, but America must commit to real change, not just press releases and greenwashing." As Nina translated, she noticed Rex whispering to one of his associates, showing him something on his phone. The associate's eyes widened, and he typed frantically on his own device. Whatever they'd found, it was spreading through the room like wildfire, through the networked nervous system of constantly connected devices. "Vosan," Takahashi said suddenly. "There is a concept in Japanese business philosophy, omotenashi. Please explain it to the room." Nina took a breath. This was more than translation now. This was cultural education. Omotenashi represents hospitality that comes from the heart, without expectation of reward. It's about anticipating needs before they're expressed, about genuine care, rather than performed service. And do you see Omotenashi in this room tonight? Nina hesitated. The honest answer would offend everyone present, but lying would offend Takahashi. I see its absence being filled by one person's presence, she said diplomatically in Japanese. Takahashi actually smiled, a real smile this time. Yamamoto taught you well. Not just language, but wisdom, Mr. Takahashi. Marla stood again, her PR training kicking in. Perhaps we could take a brief break, allow everyone to acclimate to the situation. The situation, Takahashi replied in English, is that you needed a maid to save your billion-dollar deal. There is no break from that truth. The words landed like a slap. Several people reached for their drinks, simultaneously seeking liquid courage to navigate this unexpected reality. That's when the main doors opened again, and a harried-looking man in a wrinkled suit rushed in. The professional translator finally arrived. I'm so sorry, traffic was... He stopped seeing Nina at the podium, Takahashi nearby, and the room full of stunned faces. What's happening? You're too late, Takahashi said in perfect English. And unnecessary. Vosan has proven that competence can come from unexpected places, a lesson this room desperately needed. The translator looked between Nina, Takahashi, and Cheryl, clearly trying to understand the dynamics he'd walked into. Should I? You should sit, Takahashi commanded. Perhaps you'll learn something. As the translator found a seat, looking thoroughly confused, Takahashi returned to Japanese for his final points. The terms were complex intellectual property protections, technology transfer agreements, wage requirements that would revolutionize American manufacturing standards. Nina translated it all, her voice growing stronger with each sentence. She was no longer just converting words. She was facilitating understanding, building bridges between worlds that rarely touched, despite existing in the same city, the same buildings, the same rooms. There is one more condition, Takahashi announced. A deal breaker, as you Americans say. The room leaned forward collectively. Every American company that partners with us must commit to language and cultural education for their executives. Real education, not a weekend seminar. 6 months minimum tested proficiency required. He paused, letting the weight of the requirement sink in. If you want our technology, our investments, our partnership, you must learn to speak to us, not at us, not through others, but to us. Rex stood up, his face red with indignation. That's absurd. You can't expect busy executives to spend 6 months. I expect. Takahashi interrupted. Exactly what Vosan has already done. She learned our language, our culture, our way of thinking, and she did it while you were getting your MBA, drinking your way through business school, learning to speak the hollow language of leveraged buyouts and quarterly earnings. She's a maid. Rex's composure finally cracked completely. You're taking business advice from someone who cleans toilets. The room gasped. Even Marla looked uncomfortable at the naked classism in Rex's outburst. Nina felt the words hit her like physical blows, but she kept her face neutral, continuing to translate even Rex's insult. Takahashi walked slowly to Rex, each step deliberate. When he was close enough that Rex had to look down to meet his eyes, he spoke in English, each word precise as a blade. She cleans toilets with more dignity than you conduct business, and tonight she has proven more valuable than every degree, every credential, every pretension in this room. He turned back to Nina. Vosan, please translate the following exactly. He proceeded to list Rex's last 3 failed ventures, complete with the amounts lost, the investors burned, and the employees laid off. Information that wasn't public, that shouldn't have been available to anyone outside very specific circles. Nina translated it all, watching Rex's face go from red to white to green. How do you... I do my research, Takahashi said simply. just as I researched everyone in this room. Ms. Sloane's buried scandals, Mr. Pierce's inappropriate relationships with suppliers, Ms. Kwan's falsified performance reviews. I know you all. But Vosan, he gestured to Nina. Her record is clean. 3 years of perfect grades at KO, glowing recommendations from professors, offers from top firms. And she chose this. He indicated her uniform. That interests me far more than your polished resumes built on connections and privilege. Why? The question came from Aiko, speaking for the first time. Why did you choose this, Vosan? Nina felt the weight of the question, the room's attention focusing on her like a spotlight. She could lie, could give a sanitized version that would satisfy curiosity without revealing truth. But Takahashi deserved better. The moment deserved better. My father, she said quietly in Japanese, then repeated in English, wanted me to use my education to join his world. A world where worth is measured in dollars and connections, where people like Rita, who has worked honorably for 30 years, are invisible, where Miguel, who sends half his paycheck to family in Ecuador while studying engineering at night, doesn't exist. Her voice grew stronger. I chose to learn what my education couldn't teach, how to serve without losing dignity, how to be invisible without disappearing, how to find honor in work that others disdain. Pretty words, Rex sneered, recovering some of his composure. But you're still just... The doors burst open with enough force to make everyone jump. A man strode in, late 60s, silver hair Armani suit, and an expression of barely contained fury. Nina's blood turned to ice. There you are, her father said, his voice carrying the authority of old money and older grudges. My daughter playing dress-up as the help. The room, already thick with tension, became suffocating. Mr. Va? Cheryl stammered, clearly recognizing him. We didn't know Nina was... Of course you didn't. She's been playing this game for months, embarrassing our family, rejecting everything we've given her. He walked toward Nina, each step measured, threatening. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could hide in this uniform forever? Father. Nina's voice came out steady, though her hands trembled. This isn't the time. This is exactly the time. He turned to address the room. My daughter Harvard-bound before she threw it away, heir to a real estate empire before she decided to play Mother Teresa. She could have been somebody. Instead, she's serving you drinks and cleaning your messes. She is somebody, Takahashi said quietly. Nina's father laughed, a sound like breaking glass. She's a disappointment. A cautionary tale about giving children too much freedom. He looked at Nina with disgust. Your mother cries every night. Your brothers tell their friends you're studying abroad because the truth is too shameful. The truth, Nina said, finding her voice, is that I chose my own path. You chose poverty. You chose servitude. You chose to waste everything I built for you. I chose to build something myself. As a maid, her father's voice dripped contempt. This is what you built. This is your great achievement, translating for people who will forget you the moment you leave the room. Takahashi stepped forward. I will not forget. And you are someone who recognizes value where others see only status. Takahashi moved to stand beside Nina, a subtle but powerful gesture of alliance. Your daughter has shown more courage tonight than most show in a lifetime. Courage, her father laughed again. Is that what we're calling rebellion now? Father, please? No. And he pulled out his phone. I'm calling Thomas. He'll have you removed from this position tonight. The Aurelia depends on my investments. They'll do what I say. Then they'll lose more than they gain, Takahashi announced. Vosan is now my official interpreter for all U.S. negotiations. Anyone who fires her loses access to Takahashi Industries." The room went silent enough to hear the rain still beating against the windows. "You can't be serious," Rex said. "I am always serious about business, Mr. Dalton, though you wouldn't know that since you've been too busy posting photos of the help on your Instagram." Takahashi held up his own phone, showing Rex's earlier post with Nina in the background captioned, "Even the maids are prettier at luxury events, #blessed, #NY Clive." Rex's phone disappeared into his pocket like it had caught fire. "This is insane," Marla interjected. "You're restructuring a billion-dollar deal around a hotel employee." "I'm restructuring it around someone who understands both language and labor, who knows both scholarship and service." Takahashi looked at Nina's father. "Your daughter honors you even if you're too blind to see it. She dishonors everything our family represents." "Then perhaps," Aiko said, standing slowly, "your family represents the wrong things." She walked to Nina, studying her closely. "You were in Yamamoto's Advanced Negotiation Seminar, Spring 2022. You wrote the paper on linguistic bridges in cross-cultural M&A." Nina nodded, surprised. "I guest lectured that semester. Your paper was the only one Yamamoto kept. He said you understood something most students miss, that language is never neutral, that every word carries the weight of its culture." "You knew?" Nina asked. "I suspected when I saw your bow earlier. It was perfect, not learned perfect, but lived perfect." Aiko turned to the room. "She's not just qualified to translate this deal. She's qualified to structure it." "This is ridiculous." Nina's father's voice rose to a shout. "She's my daughter. I know what she's capable of, and it isn't this fantasy you're spinning." "No," Nina said quietly, but her voice carried. "You know what you wanted me to be capable of. There's a difference." "Don't you dare." "I dare." She faced him fully now, no longer the scared girl who'd run from his expectations. "I dare to choose my own life. I dare to find honor in work you despise. I dare to be something other than your shadow." "You're nothing." The words exploded from him. "Without my name, my money, my connections, you're nothing." "Then I choose to be nothing," Nina replied, "rather than be your something." The slap happened so fast most people missed it. One moment her father's hand was at his side, the next it was swinging toward Nina's face. But Nina had grown up with his temper, knew his tells. She stepped back just enough that his palm found only air. Security appeared as if from nowhere. Aiko had apparently signaled them. They positioned themselves between Nina and her father without touching either. "Mr. Vaugh," Cheryl said, her voice shaking, "I'm going to have to ask you to—" "I own 10% of this hotel," he roared. "And I'm about to own 15, Takahashi said calmly. "Would you like to test whose percentage speaks louder?" Nina's father looked around the room, seeking allies, finding only averted eyes and uncomfortable expressions. Even Rex wouldn't meet his gaze. "This isn't over," he said to Nina. "Yes," she replied simply. "It is." He stormed out his exit, as dramatic as his entrance. The room exhaled collectively. "Well," Takahashi said after a moment, "that was illuminating. Shall we continue with business?" But before anyone could respond, Aiko's tablet chimed. She looked at it, her expression shifting to something Nina couldn't read. "Mr. Takahashi," she said in Japanese, "you need to see this." She showed him the screen. His eyes widened slightly, the first real surprise Nina had seen from him all evening. "Vo-san," he said slowly, "there's a video of you, from 3 months ago. You're translating at a community center for free. It seems helping immigrant families understand their rental rights." Nina's stomach dropped. She'd been so careful to keep her lives separate, but someone had filmed that session, posted it online. "The man you're translating for," Takahashi continued, "is suing his landlord. A landlord named—" He looked up. "William Vaughan, your father." The room seemed to tilt. Nina grabbed the podium for support. "You helped tenants sue your own father." Rex's voice was equal parts horror and admiration. "They deserve to know their rights," Nina said quietly. "Even though it cost your family money. Especially then. Justice shouldn't depend on whose side profits from it." Takahashi set down the tablet and began to clap, slow, deliberate applause that echoed through the ballroom. After a moment, Aiko joined him, then Rita from her position along the wall. Miguel. Even some of the executives began clapping, though they looked unsure why. "Vosan," Takahashi said when the applause died, "I would like to offer you a position, not just as a translator but as Director of Cultural Integration for our U.S. operations. The salary would be—" "Wait." Cheryl stepped forward, her face a mask of professional panic. "She's under contract with the hotel. She can't just—" "Actually," a new voice said from the back of the room, "she can." Everyone turned. A woman in a legal services blazer stood in the doorway holding a folder. "I'm Sandra Kim from the City Labor Board. We received a complaint about employment practices at this hotel, specifically requiring housekeeping staff to work events without event wages, threatening termination for refusing overtime, and—" She looked directly at Cheryl. "Falsifying performance reviews to deny raises." Cheryl went white. "That's completely documented. We have copies of everything thanks to an anonymous source." Sandra's gaze swept the room. "Any employee who has been affected by these practices is free to terminate their contract immediately without penalty." "Who filed the complaint?" Cheryl demanded. "That would be me," Rita said, stepping forward from the wall. 30 years I've watched you step on people like Nina. Enough is enough." "And me," Miguel added. "Nina's not the only one who knows how to document injustice." "And me." Another server stepped forward, then another, and another. Soon half the service staff had identified themselves as complainants. Cheryl looked like she might faint. Gavin had already started edging toward the exit. "So," Takahashi said to Nina, "you're free to accept my offer. What do you say?" Nina looked around the room at the executives who'd dismissed her, at the colleagues who'd supported her, at the father who'd tried to diminish her, and the billionaire who'd recognized her worth. The choice should have been simple, but nothing about her journey had been simple. "I accept," she said, "on one condition." Takahashi raised an eyebrow. "You're negotiating. You said I was qualified to structure deals. Let me structure this one." Nina took a breath. "I'll take the position, but I also want a training program for every hotel worker, restaurant server, cleaner, anyone in service who wants to learn languages, business skills, cultural competency, funded by the joint venture, available to all with job placement assistance upon completion." "That would cost millions," Rex protested. "The merger is worth billions," Nina countered. "What's a few million to change thousands of lives?" Takahashi smiled, a real, full smile that transformed his entire face. "Vosan, you've just designed the corporate social responsibility program that my board has been requesting for years. Done. There's more." "Of course there is." "Rita becomes head of the training program's advisory board. She knows better than anyone what skills service workers need to advance." "Agreed." "Miguel gets first admission full scholarship to study engineering while working part-time." "Agreed." "And—" Nina hesitated, then forged ahead. "My father's tenants, the ones from the video, they get relocation assistance if they want it, or rent stabilization if they stay." "That's not our—" Rex started. "It is now," Takahashi interrupted. Corporate responsibility isn't just about environmental metrics, Mr. Dalton. It's about human impact. All of it. He extended his hand to Nina. Do we have a deal, Director Vo? Nina shook his hand, feeling the weight of the moment not just for herself, but for every invisible person in the room who'd just become visible. One more thing, she said. I keep 1 shift a week in housekeeping. Everyone stared at her. Why? Aiko asked. Because the moment I forget what it feels like to be invisible is the moment I become like them. She gestured to Rex, to Cheryl, to the space where her father had stood. I never want to forget where I came from, even as I move toward where I'm going. Takahashi nodded slowly. Wisdom beyond your years, Vo-san. Very well. 1 shift a week, you remind yourself and us what honest work feels like. This is insane, Marla said. You're all insane. A housekeeper just restructured a $1 billion deal. No, Takahashi corrected. A brilliant woman who happens to work in housekeeping just showed us what we've been missing. There's a difference, Miss Sloane. Until you understand that difference, you'll keep missing opportunities like this one. He turned to address the room. The deal moves forward, but only with companies that commit to the language requirement and the worker training program. Those unwilling to invest in human development need not invest with us. Several executives immediately pulled out phones calling their boards. Others huddled in urgent consultation. The energy in the room had shifted completely from arrogance to urgency, from dismissal to desperate recalculation. Vo-san, Takahashi said, reverting to Japanese. There is something else. The video Aiko found there are others, many others. You've been doing this for months, haven't you? Translating for immigrants, helping them navigate systems designed to exclude them. Nina nodded, not trusting her voice. Your father knew, he suspected. It's part of why he came tonight to expose me, to shame me back into compliance. Instead, he exposed himself. Takahashi looked around the room with something like satisfaction, and gave us all a lesson in what real honor looks like. Cheryl had recovered enough to attempt damage control. Mr. Takahashi, surely we can discuss the staffing situation. You're fired, Ms. Kwan. The voice came from the back of the room. Thomas Hartwell, the hotel's owner, stood in the doorway, having apparently been watching for some time. You and Mr. Pierce both. Clear out your offices tonight. You can't. I can and I am. Ms. Kim from the Labor Board has shared some very interesting information about your management practices. We'll be lucky to avoid criminal charges. He walked to Nina. Ms. Vo, I owe you an apology. And you, Ms. Rita, Mr. Miguel, all of you. This hotel failed you, and as the owner, I take responsibility. Pretty words, Rita said with 30 years of skepticism. What are you going to do about it? For starters, promoting you to head of food and beverage. Miguel, full scholarship to complete your engineering degree while working whatever schedule accommodates your studies. And for everyone else, immediate raises to match industry standards, which we should have been paying all along. Why now? Nina asked. Why not before? Hartwell had the grace to look ashamed. Because it took someone like you to make me see what was right in front of me. I'm not proud of that, but I won't hide from it either. The professional translator who'd been sitting in shocked silence finally spoke up. Am I still needed? Yes, Takahashi said. You'll work with Vo-san to ensure nothing is lost in translation, cultural or linguistic. 2 perspectives are better than 1. Even when 1 perspective comes from housekeeping, the translator asked, not unkindly. Especially then, Takahashi replied. The view from the ground is often clearer than the view from the tower. As conversations erupted around the room, executives calling lawyers' HR departments, scrambling to create language programs, reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the story pressing against security. Nina stood at the center of it all, still in her housekeeping uniform, still holding the notebook that contained 3 years of dreams deferred, but not destroyed. Aiko approached her. "You know this is just the beginning, right? The resistance you'll face, the attempts to undermine you." "I've been invisible for 6 months," Nina replied. "I've heard what they say when they think no one's listening. I know exactly who they are and what they're capable of." "And you're not afraid." Nina thought of her father's rage, of Cheryl's humiliation, of Rex's public embarrassment. They would all seek revenge in their own ways. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'm more afraid of what happens if nothing changes. If Rita works another 30 years without recognition. If Miguel's brilliance never gets its chance. If every Nina after me has to choose between dignity and success." "They'll come for you," Aiko warned. "Your father has connections. Rex has influence. Cheryl knows where bodies are buried. Let them come?" Nina straightened her uniform one last time. "I've been preparing for this my whole life. I just didn't know it until tonight." The elevator descended in silence, but Nina could feel Rita's eyes on her in the reflection of the polished steel doors. They'd left the 47th floor in chaos, executives scrambling to salvage the deal, reporters somehow already gathering in the lobby, and Cheryl Kwan being escorted out by security, her designer heels clicking a furious staccato against marble. "You know what you just did, right?" Rita finally spoke, as they passed the 20th floor. "You didn't just change your life up there. You changed everything." Before Nina could respond, her phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. She pulled it out to find dozens of messages flooding in numbers she didn't recognize, reporters who'd somehow gotten her contact information, and one that made her blood freeze, her mother. "Coming to you now. Don't move." The elevator opened at the service level, and Nina barely had time to step out before she saw her Lillian Vaugh dressed in Chanel. Despite the late hour, her face a mask of controlled fury that Nina knew preceded storms. "Mother, not here!" Lillian's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "The loading dock, now!" They walked through the maze of service corridors, past the laundry still running its night shift, past the empty employee break room with its flickering fluorescent lights. Nina had walked these halls hundreds of times in the past 6 months, but never with her mother's Louboutins clicking behind her like a countdown to execution. The loading dock was empty, except for Miguel, who was taking a smoke break he'd definitely earned after tonight. He saw Nina's face, and immediately stubbed out his cigarette. "I'll give you some privacy," he said, but Nina caught his arm. "Stay, please." She needed a witness, someone who'd seen what really happened upstairs. Lillian's laugh was bitter. "Of course, choosing strangers over family. That's your specialty now, isn't it? Mom, your father called me. Hysterical. Said you humiliated him in front of half of Manhattan's financial district. Said you've been helping his tenants sue him. Said you chose a Japanese businessman over your own blood." "That's not what happened." "Then what did happen, Nina? Because from where I'm standing, you just destroyed everything we built for you." Miguel stepped forward, surprising everyone. "Mrs. Vaugh, with respect, your daughter just translated a $1 billion deal. She saved thousands of jobs. She's a maid," Lillian snapped. "My daughter, who could have been at Harvard Law right now, is cleaning toilets and serving champagne to people who should be her peers." "They were never going to be my peers, Mom." Nina's voice came out steadier than she felt. "They were only ever going to be my judges, measuring me against Father's money, your connections, our family name. I wanted to be measured against my own choices. And this is what you chose." This, Lillian gestured at Nina's uniform with disgust. I chose to learn what you never taught me how to work without a safety net, how to earn respect instead of demanding it, how to see people. Father taught us we're invisible. Those people have names. Rita, who's been here 30 years and never missed a shift even when her husband was dying of cancer. Miguel, who's getting his engineering degree at night while supporting 3 siblings. Keiko from laundry, who speaks 4 languages but can't afford citizenship lawyers. Why should I care about? Because they're human beings, Mom. Because their work makes your world possible. Because... Nina's voice cracked. Because I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone who could walk past suffering and feel nothing but mild inconvenience. Lillian's face hardened. Your father's cutting you off, completely. No trust fund, no inheritance, no family name. I know. You know, that's all you know. I've known it was coming since I took this job. I've been saving every paycheck, living in a studio in Queens, learning to budget like the 99% of America father pretends doesn't exist. This is that professor's influence, isn't it? That Japanese man who filled your head with... Professor Yamamoto taught me that language is culture, and culture is understanding, and understanding is the only real currency that matters. Currency? Lillian laughed bitterly. You want to talk about currency? Your father's going to destroy you. He's already making calls. That position Takahashi offered, he'll make sure it disappears. That visa you used to study in Tokyo, he'll have it investigated. Every job you apply for, every apartment you try to rent, every... Mrs. Vaugh. The voice came from behind them. Aiko Tanada stood in the doorway, having followed them down. I couldn't help but overhear. Are you threatening your daughter? This is a family matter. No, it's a business matter now. Nina is a Takahashi Industries employee as of 10 minutes ago. Any action taken against her is action taken against our company. Aiko stepped closer, her small frame somehow filling the space. And I should mention we've been recording everything tonight for our documentation, including this conversation. Lillian's face went pale. You can't. We can. We did. And if your husband follows through on any of those threats, we'll ensure everyone knows exactly what kind of man William Vaugh really is. Aiko pulled out her tablet, showing a screen full of data. We know about the building violations, Mrs. Vaugh. The safety shortcuts, the bribed inspectors, the families displaced by illegal evictions. Would you like me to continue? How dare you? How dare you? Aiko countered. Your daughter showed more courage tonight than most people show in a lifetime, and instead of pride, you bring threats. Nina felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. Mom, she said quietly, I'm not doing this to hurt you. Then why? Because I couldn't breathe in the life you planned for me. Because every expectation felt like a weight on my chest. Because I looked at father's friends and saw vultures looked at their wives and saw cages with golden bars. Those cages come with security. They come with a price I'm not willing to pay. Lillian stared at her daughter for a long moment, and Nina saw something flicker across her face, not understanding exactly, but maybe recognition. Just for a second, Nina saw the woman her mother might have been before she married William Vaugh, before she learned to smile while being dismissed, before she turned her intelligence into weapons, because that was the only way she was allowed to use it. You're just like her, Lillian said finally. Like who? Your grandmother. My mother. She was a nurse, you know, before she met my father. Gave it up when she married, but she never stopped talking about her patients, the lives she'd saved, the work that mattered. Lillian's voice softened just slightly. She would have been proud of you tonight. But you're not. Lillian stopped, seeming to struggle with words for the first time Nina could remember. I'm terrified for you. The world is cruel to women who don't follow rules. It's cruel to women who do follow them too, Nina replied. At least this way I'm choosing my own battles. Before Lillian could respond, Nina's phone exploded with notifications. Videos were going viral. Someone had been live streaming from the ballroom. The confrontation with her father Takahashi's defense of her, the entire translation scene, was spreading across social media like wildfire. "Oh God," Lillian breathed, looking at her own phone. Mr. Vaugh is going to do nothing." Thomas Hartwell emerged from the shadows where he'd apparently been standing. "Because if he does, I'll personally ensure every building violation, every tax discrepancy, every questionable deal gets forwarded to the appropriate authorities." "You're threatening us." "I'm protecting my employee. Nina's contract with the hotel may be ending, but she's under my protection until it does." He looked at Nina. "And after, if needed. Your father cost me good employees for years with his influence. Time to balance the scales." Lillian looked between them all. Her daughter surrounded by people willing to fight for her people, she'd dismissed as beneath notice. Something in her face crumbled. "I have to go," she said quietly. "Your father will be Mom." Nina caught her hand. "You could leave too." For a moment, Lillian squeezed her daughter's fingers. Then she pulled away. "Some cages are harder to escape than others," she said, and walked back into the hotel. Nina stood in the loading dock, shaking slightly as the reality of what had happened began to sink in. She'd just severed ties with everything she'd known, everything that had defined her first 24 years of life. "You okay?" Miguel asked quietly. "I don't know," Nina admitted. "I don't know what okay looks like anymore." "It looks like this," Rita said, appearing in the doorway with a bottle of champagne she'd definitely not gotten through proper channels. "It looks like standing up when everyone wants you to kneel. It looks like choosing truth over comfort." "It looks expensive," Nina said with a weak laugh, recognizing the label the bottle was worth more than she made in a week. "Cheryl's private stash," Rita grinned. "Seemed appropriate considering." They were about to open it when Aiko's tablet chimed urgently. Her face went pale as she read. "We have a problem. Rex Dalton just called an emergency board meeting. He's trying to block the deal, claiming Takahashi's mentally incompetent for trusting a hotel maid with translation." "Can he do that?" Nina asked. "He's got enough investors spooked to try. We need to get back upstairs, now!" They ran for the elevator, champagne forgotten. As they rose through the building, Nina could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. The 47th floor had transformed into a battlefield. The ballroom had been divided into camps. Rex commanded one corner with a cluster of younger executives all staring at laptops and phones. Takahashi held another position near the windows, surrounded by his team, and surprisingly several American executives who seemed to have switched sides. "There she is," Rex announced as Nina entered. "The minimum wage worker who thinks she can handle international finance." "The federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour," Nina said calmly. "I make $18. If you're going to insult me, at least be accurate." Several people laughed. Rex's face flushed. "This is serious business." "Yes, it is." Nina walked to the center of the room, forcing everyone to turn toward her. "Which is why accuracy matters. For instance, Mr. Dalton, you claimed earlier that the Tokyo office keeps using a Japanese saying. But you've never been to the Tokyo office, have you?" "I've been to Seoul, to Singapore, to Hong Kong. Never Tokyo." Nina pulled out her phone, showing flight records that Aiko had somehow procured. "You've been claiming Tokyo expertise based on a 3-day conference in Osaka 2 years ago." "How did you—" "The same way I knew the supply chain vulnerability in Takahashi's proposal would affect your portfolio specifically. I pay attention, I research, I prepare." She turned to address the room. Mr. Dalton wants you to believe I'm unqualified because I work in housekeeping. But let me tell you what housekeeping taught me. She walked to the whiteboard someone had brought in, picking up a marker. Every morning at 5 a.m., I review my room assignments. 12 rooms on average each with specific requirements. Mr. Harrison in 4012 is allergic to lavender, can't use the standard cleaning products. Mrs. Chen in 4015 has arthritis, needs the shampoo bottles loosened. The Japanese delegation in the penthouse expects shoes arranged at precisely 30-degree angles. She began writing on the board numbers. Patterns, logistics. I manage chemical inventories, ensuring OSHA compliance while maintaining EPI standards. I coordinate with maintenance when I spot problems guests haven't noticed yet, a pipe about to burst, an electrical outlet showing wear. I do all of this in 4 languages, translating for guests who don't speak English, solving problems before they become complaints. That's not the same as, Rex started. Last month, Nina continued, I prevented a $1 million lawsuit when I noticed a guest had left confidential merger documents in his room, and another guest, his competitor, was scheduled to check in that afternoon. I secured the documents, contacted legal, and managed the situation without either party knowing how close they'd come to disaster. She turned to face Rex directly. So yes, Mr. Dalton, I clean toilets. I also manage logistics, maintain confidentiality, solve problems under pressure, and navigate cultural differences every single day. Which part of that makes me unqualified to translate a business deal? She has a point. One of Rex's allies said quietly, earning a glare. Additionally, Aiko added, pulling up documents on her tablet and casting them to the room's main screen. Ms. Vaugh's academic record speaks for itself. Perfect scores in international finance contract law and cross-cultural negotiation. Her thesis on linguistic arbitrage in emerging markets was published in the KO Business Review. Then why is she cleaning rooms? Someone asked. Because, Nina said, I wanted to understand work from the ground up. How can you lead people you've never stood beside? How can you make decisions affecting workers you've never been? That's very philosophical, Rex said sarcastically. But this is about money. Everything's about money to you, isn't it? Nina walked to his side of the room. That's why you missed the most important part of Takahashi's proposal. Which is, he wasn't just testing our language skills, he was testing our character. Every company in this room has the capital for this deal. Not every company has the integrity. Integrity doesn't show up on balance sheets. It does in Japan. Takahashi spoke for the first time since Nina had returned. We have a saying, the reputation of 1,000 years may be determined by the conduct of 1 hour. Tonight was that hour. He walked to the whiteboard, adding his own notations to Nina's. Ms. Vaughn understood something in my proposal, that Mr. Dalton missed entirely. The workforce development isn't corporate charity. It's investment in innovation. Every worker we train becomes a bridge between our companies. Every language learned opens new markets. Every life improved strengthens the foundation of the partnership. You're gambling billions on feeling good, Rex challenged. I'm investing billions in sustainable growth. The only gamble would be partnering with people who can't see the difference. The room erupted in side conversations. Nina noticed several executives pulling away from Rex's camp, moving toward neutral ground. That's when the doors burst open again. This time it was a full camera crew. Somehow a major news network had gotten access to the floor. We're looking for Nina Vo, the reporter announced, scanning the room. We understand there's been a major corporate shakeup involving security. Cheryl's replacement, a nervous-looking assistant manager, tried to block the cameras. Actually, Thomas Hartwell said, let them in. If we're going to do this, let's do it publicly. The reporter zeroed in on Nina. Ms. Vaughn, is it true you went from housekeeping to heading a major international partnership in one night? Before Nina could answer, Rex jumped in. This is a mischaracterization. She's not heading anything. She's a translator. I'm a bridge, Nina corrected, stepping into the camera's view. Between cultures that need to understand each other, between workers who deserve opportunity, and companies that need talent, between old ways of doing business and new possibilities. But you are a housekeeper. I am. And I'm proud of it. Every job I've done here taught me something you can't learn in business school. Such as that the people who keep the world running are usually the ones least rewarded for it. That's what this partnership aims to change. The reporter turned to Takahashi. Mr. Takahashi, you're trusting a multi-billion-dollar deal to someone with no corporate experience. I'm trusting it to someone with human experience. Ms. Va knows what it means to work 16-hour shifts, to send money home to family, to be overlooked and undervalued. That knowledge is worth more than any MBA. This is insane, Rex muttered, but the microphone caught it. Mr. Dalton, the reporter swung toward him. You seem to disagree. Rex straightened his tie, trying to recover his composure. I simply think we should maintain professional standards. Professional standards, Rita's voice cut through from where the service staff had gathered to watch. Like requiring unpaid overtime, like threatening to fire anyone who calls in sick, like the harassment reports that get buried because the harassers have connections. The camera swung to her. And you are Rita Martinez, 30 years of service, and tonight's the first time anyone above management has heard my name. That's not relevant, Rex started. It's the only thing that's relevant, Nina interrupted. This deal isn't just about technology transfer or profit margins. It's about changing how American business values its workers. Pretty words, the reporter said. But what about practical concerns, Mr. Dalton raised questions about your qualifications. Nina's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. Actually, I just received confirmation of my qualifications. She held up the phone. Professor Yamamoto from Keio University. He's offering to join by video to verify my capabilities. That won't be necessary, a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. An elderly Japanese man stood there dignified despite the late hour and the chaos around him. Professor Yamamoto, Nina gasped. I was in New York for a conference, he said in accented English. When I heard my best student was translating for Takahashi-san, I had to come. He walked to Nina and bowed deeply, a gesture of respect that made everyone who understood Japanese etiquette gasp. You honor our teachings, Vo-san. Sensei, you took the harder path. You chose understanding over advantage. He turned to the room. This young woman could have graduated and joined any firm in Tokyo. Instead, she chose to return to America to learn what cannot be taught: humility service, the dignity of honest work. You gave up job offers in Tokyo to clean hotel rooms, the reporter asked, incredulous. I gave up job offers to learn who I really am, Nina replied. And I found out I'm someone who can stand between worlds and help them understand each other. This is all very touching, Rex said, desperation creeping into his voice. But we're talking about billions of dollars. Which is exactly why we need someone who understands their true value, Takahashi interrupted. Money is just paper and promises. The real value is in the people who create, who build, who serve. He walked to the whiteboard and began writing not financial figures, but names. Rita, Miguel, Nina. Then more names pulled from memory, the workers he'd noticed during his stay, the ones who'd made his visit possible while remaining invisible. These are your assets, he said to the room. Not your balance sheets or your portfolios. These people. And if you can't see that, you don't deserve to partner with us. The room fell silent, except for the quiet whir of cameras. Then from the back of the room, someone started clapping. It was one of Rex's allies, or former allies. I'm in, he said. Whatever this partnership looks like, I want in. Me too, another executive said. And me. One by one, the dominoes fell. Rex watched his support evaporate his face, cycling through colors like a malfunctioning traffic light. "This is a mistake," he said finally. "You're all making a huge mistake." "The only mistake," Takahashi said, "would be continuing to do business the old way." Rex grabbed his phone, typing furiously. "My lawyers will be in touch. This isn't over." "Yes," Nina said quietly. "It is." Rex stormed out, followed by the few remaining holdouts who couldn't see the tide turning. The reporter turned back to Nina. "So what happens now?" "Now we build something new. A partnership that values workers as much as shareholders, that invests in people as much as profits." "And you'll be leading this?" Nina looked at Takahashi, who nodded. "I'll be facilitating it, along with a team that includes people from every level of the organization, because the best ideas don't always come from the top." "Speaking of which," Aiko interjected, reading from her tablet, "the video of tonight's events has gone viral. 3 million views and climbing. The hashtag #MaidToManager is trending globally." Nina felt her phone buzzing constantly now, messages, calls, notifications. The world was watching. "Ms. Va," the reporter asked, "what would you say to other workers watching this, people in service positions who dream of more?" Nina thought of her mother's words about cages, about her father's fury, about Cheryl's dismissive sneer. Then she thought of Rita's 30 years of dignity, Miguel's quiet brilliance, her own journey from shame to pride. "I'd say your work has value even if others can't see it. Your perspective matters especially because it's different, and your dreams are valid no matter what uniform you wear while dreaming them. But surely not everyone can have a moment like this. This moment didn't just happen. It was built on 6 months of exhaustion, of choosing to learn instead of resent, of taking notes when no one was watching, of studying languages when I could have been sleeping." Nina looked directly into the camera. "Every moment you think no one sees you, you're building toward the moment when everyone will." The camera crew was packing up their equipment when Nina's phone screen lit up with a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, but something about the international prefix made her answer. "Nina Vo." The voice was female, crisp, with a British accent tinged with something else. "This is Vivian Chen from the Financial Times. We'd like to offer you an exclusive interview." "I'm sorry, but I need to decline." Nina was already moving toward the service elevator, desperate for a moment of quiet to process everything that had happened. "We're prepared to pay." Nina ended the call. The phone immediately rang again. Different number, same international prefix. She turned it off completely. "Smart move," Aiko said, appearing beside her. "The vultures will circle for days, but we have a more immediate problem." "What now?" "Your father. He's downstairs in the lobby with his legal team. Building security won't let them up, but..." The service elevator doors opened, revealing William Vaugh himself. He'd somehow accessed the service corridors, probably through connections Nina didn't want to think about. Behind him stood 2 men in expensive suits carrying briefcases that practically screamed lawyers. "We need to talk," her father said, his voice dangerously calm. "Mr. Vaugh," Thomas Hartwell stepped forward, "you're trespassing in employee-only areas." "I own 10% of this building," William snapped. "I'll go where I please." "Actually," one of his lawyers said, pulling out a document, "Mr. Vaugh owns 12% as of this evening. He just purchased additional shares." Nina felt her stomach drop. Her father's smile was predatory. "Enough to demand an emergency board meeting," he continued. "Enough to question certain employment decisions. Enough to make life very difficult for anyone who stands between me and my daughter." "I'm not your property," Nina said, finding her voice. "You're my responsibility, and I'm not letting you throw your life away for some delusion of independence." "Delusion!" Professor Yamamoto stepped forward, his elderly frame radiating quiet authority. Your daughter just facilitated a deal that will bring thousands of jobs to America. What delusion do you see in that? William's eyes narrowed. You're the one who filled her head with this nonsense. I taught her to think. Apparently that threatens you. What threatens me is watching my daughter destroy her future. The only thing being destroyed here is your ego, Takahashi interjected. Your daughter succeeded without your money, your name, your connections. That terrifies you, doesn't it? William's face flushed. You don't know anything about. I know enough. Takahashi pulled out his phone, showing the screen to the room. I know about the building in Chinatown, where you've been cited for 12 safety violations. I know about the family you evicted last Christmas Eve because they complained about mold. I know about the construction company you bankrupted because they refused to use substandard materials. How did you? The same way I know you're about to lose that 12% ownership. Takahashi smiled coldly. You see, while you were rushing to buy those shares, my team was investigating who was selling. Turns out the seller has some interesting tax issues. The sale might not be entirely legal. One of William's lawyers frantically checked his phone, his face going pale. Mr. Vaugh, we need to review. Shut up. William's composure cracked. Nina, you're coming with me. Now. No. That wasn't a request. Neither was my answer. William stepped toward his daughter, but suddenly Miguel and Rita were there flanking Nina. Then more service staff appeared. Housekeepers, servers, maintenance workers, even kitchen staff still in their whites. They formed a protective semicircle around Nina. You'll have to go through all of us, Rita said quietly. This is kidnapping. One lawyer started. This is family, Miguel corrected. Something you wouldn't understand. William looked at the wall of workers' people he'd never noticed, never acknowledged, certainly never respected standing between him and his daughter. His hands clenched into fists. You're choosing them over your own blood. I'm choosing people who see me, Nina replied. Not what they wanted me to be, not what they expected me to become, but who I actually am. You're nothing without the Vaugh name, then I'll be nothing. Nina pulled something from her pocket, her driver's license. With deliberate movements, she tore it in half. I'll legally change my name tomorrow. Nina Martinez, maybe after Rita. Or Nina Yamamoto, after the professor who taught me to think. Or just Nina. Just myself. The room held its breath. William's face cycled through emotions, rage, disbelief, and something that might have been grief. Your mother will never forgive you. She already has, Nina said softly. She just can't admit it yet. Before William could respond, his phone rang. He answered it, his face growing paler with each word he heard. What do you mean, frozen? He was nearly shouting. That's impossible. Aiko cleared her throat delicately. Perhaps I should mention that Takahashi Industries has significant influence with several international banks. When we informed them of potential legal issues with your recent transactions, you can't do this. We can, Takahashi said simply. We have. Your assets are frozen pending investigation. I believe the term is karma, though you might know it better as consequences. William turned to his lawyers, but they were already backing toward the door, clearly not wanting to be associated with whatever was about to happen to the Vaugh Empire. This isn't over, William snarled at Nina. No, she agreed. But we are, and he stormed out his expensive shoes, slipping slightly on the freshly mopped floor, a detail that shouldn't have been satisfying, but was. The moment he was gone, Nina's legs gave out. Miguel caught her before she hit the ground, and suddenly everyone was around her, supporting her, holding her up when she couldn't hold herself. I just disowned my father, she whispered. No, Rita corrected. You just chose your real family. Through the crowd, Nina saw Thomas Hartwell on his phone, his expression grim. He ended the call and approached her. That was building security. There are now approximately 200 reporters in the lobby. The story's gone international, BBC, NHK, Deutsche Welle. Everyone wants to talk to the maid who brought down Wall Street's ego. I need air, Nina said weakly. The roof, Miguel suggested. No one will think to look there. They took the service elevator to the roof access. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and sparkling. Manhattan spread out below them, a galaxy of lights and possibilities. Nina stood at the railing, breathing in the cool air, trying to process the complete destruction and reconstruction of her life in a single evening. Vosan. Professor Yamamoto joined her at the railing. Are you all right? I don't know what I am anymore, Sensei. You are what you've always been, a bridge. Tonight you simply showed others the bridge was there. I burned every bridge to my old life. Sometimes we must destroy what constrains us to build what sustains us. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Yamamoto pulled out a worn envelope from his jacket. I've been carrying this for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to give it to you. Nina opened it. Inside was a letter in Japanese, handwritten with careful calligraphy. It's a recommendation, Yamamoto explained, for a position I've never told anyone about. My brother runs a foundation in Tokyo. They fund social enterprises, businesses that put workers before profits. They've been looking for someone to head their American expansion. Sensei, you don't have to decide now, but know that you have options beyond what Takahashi offers, beyond what anyone offers. You've proven tonight that you can create your own path. Before Nina could respond, Aiko appeared on the roof, slightly out of breath. We have a situation. Rex Dalton didn't leave. He's in the hotel's data center. What? Why would he? He's trying to access the security footage from tonight. If he gets it, he can edit it. Make it look like you said things you didn't, make it seem like... Nina was already running. They took the stairs faster than waiting for the elevator. The data center was in the basement, a restricted area that required special access that Rex shouldn't have had. They found him hunched over a terminal, a USB drive plugged into the server. On the screen, video files were copying rapidly. Stop right there, Thomas Hartwell commanded. He'd followed them down along with building security. Rex spun around, his face wild. You don't understand. This nobody just cost me everything. My investors are pulling out. My fund is collapsing. Because you revealed who you really are, Nina said quietly. I'm Rex Dalton. I went to Wharton. My father owns... Your father owns a company built on fraud, Takahashi interrupted, entering the room with a folder. We've been investigating all evening. Shall I share what we found? Rex's hand moved toward the server, toward some kind of emergency deletion button, but Miguel was faster. He grabbed Rex's wrist, his dishwasher strengthened grip, unbreakable. I wouldn't, Miguel said mildly. Security moved in, but Rex wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone with his free hand, activating a recording app. Fine. You want to play rough. Nina Vo is an illegal immigrant. She overstayed her visa in Japan. I have the documents. No, Professor Yamamoto said calmly. You have forged documents. We anticipated you might try this. He produced a folder of his own. Ms. Vo's visa status has always been perfectly legal. However, your attempts to forge government documents, that's a federal crime. Rex's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering on the concrete floor. You set me up. You set yourself up, Nina replied. We just made sure there would be evidence. The police arrived, then. Apparently, Aiko had called them the moment she realized Rex was in the building. As they led him away, he turned back to Nina. This isn't how the world works. People like you don't win. They do now, she replied simply. After Rex was gone, and statements had been given, the group found themselves back in the ballroom. It was nearly 3 in the morning, but no one seemed able to leave. The space that had hosted so much drama felt different now, quieter, somehow smaller. "So what happens tomorrow?" Rita asked. "Tomorrow?" Takahashi said, "We begin. The partnership papers will be signed at 9 a.m. Ms. Va, or whatever name you choose, will officially start her position, and will announce the worker training program." "Where?" Miguel asked. "You'll need facilities teachers." "Here," Thomas Hartwell announced. "The hotel has conference spaces we barely use. We'll convert them to classrooms. It seems appropriate the place where Nina found her voice becomes a place where others can find theirs." "It's going to be chaos," Aiko warned. "The media attention alone, let it be chaos," Nina said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "Chaos is just change that hasn't found its rhythm yet." "Speaking of change," Hartwell continued, "Rita, the food and beverage director position starts tomorrow. Miguel, your engineering scholarship is approved, and we'll work your schedule around your classes. And for any other staff interested, the training program begins enrollment immediately." "What about Cheryl and Gavin?" someone asked. "Cheryl's been arrested," Hartwell said quietly. "Turns out the labor board found more than just wage theft. As for Gavin, he's already fled the state." "Good riddance," Rita muttered. Professor Yamamoto stood slowly, his age showing in the careful movement. "I must leave soon. My flight back to Tokyo is in 6 hours. But Nina, before I go, there's something else." He pulled out his phone, showing a message in Japanese. "It's from your Tokyo classmates. They've been watching the live stream. They want you to know they're proud of you." Nina felt tears spring to her eyes. She'd thought that chapter of her life was closed, but here it was supporting her still. "Tell them," she started, then switched to Japanese. "Tell them I'm still learning, still growing, still becoming whoever I'm meant to be." "You already are who you're meant to be," Yamamoto replied. Tonight simply revealed it. As the professor left, Nina found herself alone with Takahashi for the first time all evening. The billionaire who'd started this avalanche of change studied her with those sharp eyes. "You know, this was never really about the translation," he said quietly. "I know. I could have brought 10 translators. I speak English perfectly well, but I wanted to see what would happen when someone's true worth was revealed in a room full of people who couldn't see it. Why, because I was you once. 40 years ago, I was a factory worker's son who got lucky, got educated, got opportunities. But I never forgot what it felt like to be invisible." He paused. "Most people do forget. You didn't. I was only invisible for 6 months. But you chose to be. That's the difference. You could have taken your father's money, lived his life, never known what it meant to be dismissed, overlooked, undervalued. Instead, you chose to learn." "I chose to hide," Nina corrected. "I was a coward. You were preparing. Like a butterfly in a chrysalis, sometimes we need darkness to develop our wings." "I don't feel like I have wings." "Then how do you explain flying tonight?" Before Nina could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. "Nina, this is your mother. I'm in the lobby. We need to talk." Nina's heart skipped. She's here. "Your mother? She says she's in the lobby." Takahashi nodded. "Go. Some bridges deserve rebuilding." Nina made her way to the elevator, then stopped. The lobby would be full of reporters. The last thing she wanted was her reunion with her mother to become another spectacle. She texted back, "Service entrance, loading dock." The loading dock was empty now, the night shift long gone. Lillian Voss stood in the shadows, looking smaller than Nina had ever seen her. She'd changed clothes, gone were the Chanel suit and Louboutins replaced with jeans and flats Nina didn't even know her mother owned. "I left him," Lillian said without preamble. Nina's breath caught. "Mom, don't," Let me say this. Lillian's voice shook. I've been in that marriage for 26 years. 26 years of being decoration of smiling when I wanted to scream of watching him destroy people and saying nothing because speaking up meant losing everything. You don't have to explain. I do, because you did what I never could. You walked away from it all. I had less to lose. No, Lillian said firmly. You had everything to lose, your youth, your opportunities, your future. I just had things, houses, cars, jewelry, cages with different decorations. She pulled out an envelope, worn and yellow with age. This was my acceptance letter. Columbia Medical School, 1998. Nina stared. You were accepted to medical school. Top of my class at undergraduate. They offered me a full scholarship. Lillian's laugh was bitter. But your father had already proposed, and in his world wives didn't have careers. They had charities, galas, appropriate hobbies. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because admitting it made it real, the life I gave up, the person I could have been. Lillian stepped closer. But watching you tonight, seeing you stand up to him, choosing your own path, you did what I couldn't. It's not too late, Nina said softly. You could still. I'm 51 years old, Nina. So, there are programs for returning students, second careers. With what money? Your father will freeze everything, contest the divorce, drag it out for years. With this money, Takahashi's voice came from the doorway. Both women spun around to find him standing there with Aiko. I apologize for intruding, he continued, but I couldn't help overhearing. Mrs. Va, I understand you have a background in biology. Yes, decades ago. We're funding a medical training program as part of our workforce development. We need administrators who understand both medicine and life experience. The position comes with housing assistance and tuition coverage for anyone who wants to pursue further education. Lillian stared at him. You don't even know me. I know you raised a daughter brave enough to stand against the world. That tells me everything I need to know. This is charity. This is opportunity, Takahashi corrected. The same opportunity your daughter created for herself. The question is whether you're brave enough to take it. Mother and daughter looked at each other across years of silence, expectations, disappointments, and love too complicated to name. Yes, Lillian whispered. Then stronger, yes. Nina hugged her mother for the first time in 2 years, feeling the walls they'd built between them finally crumbling. Your father will come after both of us now, Lillian warned. Let him, Nina replied. We have something he never understood, people who see our worth beyond our usefulness to them. Ms. Va, Aiko interrupted gently. Both Ms. Va's actually. We should go back inside. The media situation is getting complicated. They returned to find the ballroom in controlled chaos. Someone had leaked Rex's arrest, and now financial reporters were mixing with social justice bloggers, tech journalists, and international correspondents. The story had evolved from Maid saves deal to something bigger, a referendum on American corporate culture, on dignity in labor, on the value of human worth beyond monetary measures. Ms. Va. A reporter Nina recognized from CNN pushed forward. Is it true your father is attempting to sue Takahashi Industries for interference? No comment, Nina started to say, but then stopped. She was tired of no comments, of letting others control the narrative. My father can sue whoever he wants, she said clearly. But he can't sue away the truth that success built on exploitation is failure, that wealth without wisdom is poverty, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose to see people others ignore. Are you saying your father exploits? I'm saying the system that created my father's wealth creates all our poverty, moral, spiritual, communal. Tonight, we're choosing to build something different. And what about accusations that you're just another diversity hire, that Takahashi is virtue signaling? The question hung in the air like a poisoned dart. Nina felt the old familiar rage, the one she'd swallowed every time someone assumed she was the help. Every time they talked through her, like she wasn't there. Every time they dismissed her existence. But this time, she didn't swallow it. "You want to talk about diversity hires?" She walked toward the reporter. "Let's talk about Rex Dalton hired because his father knew someone. Let's talk about Cheryl Kwan promoted because she made the right people comfortable. Let's talk about every boardroom filled with people who look the same, think the same, come from the same zip codes." She turned to address all the cameras. "I'm not a diversity hire. I'm a competence hire who happens to bring diversity. And if that threatens people, they should ask themselves why competence from unexpected sources scares them so much. But surely you can understand why some people might question. I understand that some people will always find reasons to question women, to question minorities, to question anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of deserving." Nina's voice rose. "But their questions don't deserve our answers anymore." The question hung in the air for a moment, before Takahashi stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention from the assembled media. "Since we're discussing qualifications," he said, pulling out his phone, "let me share something interesting. 3 hours ago, I had my team run a blind evaluation. We took Ms. Vaugh's translation work from tonight, removed her name, and sent it to 5 top translation firms in Tokyo, London, and New York." He held up the screen, showing a series of emails. Every single firm rated it as master-level work. 2 offered immediate contracts. 1 called it, and I quote, "the most nuanced cultural translation we've ever evaluated." He looked at the CNN reporter. They had no idea it came from someone in housekeeping. Merit is merit, regardless of the uniform it wears. The reporter shifted uncomfortably, but before she could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. A group of men in FBI windbreakers entered their presence, immediately shifting the atmosphere from corporate drama to something far more serious. "We're looking for William Vaux," the lead agent announced. Nina's blood ran cold. "He left over an hour ago." "We know. We have agents at his residence, but we need to speak with you, Ms. Vaux. And you, Mr. Takahashi." "What's this about?" Lillian demanded, stepping protectively toward her daughter. The agent glanced at the cameras, clearly weighing his words. "We've been investigating Mr. Vaugh's real estate holdings for 18 months. Tonight's events have accelerated our timeline. We need any documentation you might have regarding his business practices." "I don't have—" Nina started. "Actually," Miguel interrupted, pulling out a thick folder from behind the bar where he'd apparently hidden it. "You might want to see this." Everyone stared at him. "I've been keeping records," he said simply. "Every time Mr. Vaux came here for meetings, every conversation I overheard while serving drinks, every document left behind that I was told to shred but didn't." "Miguel," Rita breathed, "that could have gotten you fired, or worse. Some things are worth the risk." He handed the folder to the FBI agent. "There's more on a flash drive in my locker. Building plans that don't match filed permits, recorded conversations about bribing inspectors, emails about intimidating tenants." The agent's eyes widened as he flipped through the papers. "This is... How long have you been collecting this?" 3 years. Ever since Mr. Vaux had my cousin's family evicted on Christmas Eve. The same family he was talking about earlier." Nina stared at Miguel with new respect. "You've been planning this for 3 years. I've been waiting for the right moment. You created it tonight." The lead agent pulled out his radio, speaking rapidly. "We need additional units at the Vaux residence. And get Treasury on the line, this is bigger than we thought." "How much bigger?" Takahashi asked. "If these documents are authentic, we're looking at potential RICO charges, money laundering, tax evasion, criminal conspiracy." The agent looked at Nina. "Ms. Vaux, I need to ask, were you aware of your father's activities?" "She's been estranged from him for months," Lillian interjected firmly. "Living on her own, supporting herself, explicitly rejecting his business and values." We'll need to verify that, but the preliminary investigation supports it. Ms. Vaugh appears to have actively distanced herself from the family business. The agent paused. In fact, the video of her helping tenants sue her father suggests she was working against his interests. Not against, Nina corrected quietly. For justice. There's a difference. The agent nodded, then turned to the cameras. I'm going to have to ask all media to leave. This is now an active crime scene. The reporters erupted in questions, but security began ushering them out. As the last camera disappeared, Nina felt herself sag against the bar. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night was finally fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. It's not over, Aiko said softly, reading something on her tablet. The story's evolved. You're trending globally, but not just as the maid who saved a deal. They're calling you the catalyst for a labor revolution. She showed Nina the screen. Videos from the ballroom had inspired similar revelations worldwide. In London, a janitor was testifying before Parliament about wage theft. In Tokyo, a group of convenience store workers were demanding better conditions. In Mumbai, hotel staff were organizing for the first time in decades. I didn't mean to start. Revolutions are never started by people who mean to, Takahashi observed. They're started by people who simply refuse to accept what everyone else calls inevitable. Nina's phone buzzed. She looked at it, expecting another reporter, but it was a text from an unknown number with a photo attached. The image showed her father being led away in handcuffs. His perfect suit wrinkled his face, a mask of disbelief. They got him, Lillian whispered, looking at her own phone. The relief Nina expected to feel didn't come. Instead, there was only sadness for the father he could have been, for the family they might have had, for all the wasted years of choosing wealth over worth. Ms. Vaugh. Thomas Hartwell approached. There's something else. The board just held an emergency vote. Given Cheryl's arrest and the labor violations, they've decided to restructure completely. They want you to head the transition team. What, I don't even work here anymore. You understand both sides, management and labor. You've proven you can bridge those worlds. The position comes with a substantial salary and the authority to implement real change. Nina looked at Takahashi, uncertain. You can do both, he said simply. The Takahashi position is primarily consultative. This would give you practical authority to implement what we're designing. But I don't have experience. You have 6 months of experience seeing everything that's broken, Rita interrupted. That's more qualification than any MBA. Before Nina could respond, another commotion erupted at the entrance. This time it wasn't FBI agents, but a group of hotel workers, housekeepers, maintenance staff, kitchen workers, all still in their uniforms despite the late hour. We heard what happened, one of them said, a woman Nina recognized from the laundry department. Is it true? Are things really going to change? Nina looked at their faces, hopeful, skeptical, tired from years of being overlooked. She thought of all the promises made by management over the years, all the initiatives that had amounted to nothing, all the times they'd been told to wait for change that never came. Yes, she said firmly, but not because of me, because of us, because we're done waiting for permission to matter. The news is saying you're some kind of hero, another worker said, but you're just Nina. You cleaned rooms next to me for months. That's exactly why things can change, Nina replied. Because I'm just Nina. If I can stand up here, speak truth to power, demand dignity, so can you. So can all of us. But they have money lawyers' connections. And we have something they don't, Miguel interrupted. We have each other, and we have the truth about how this world really runs on our labor, our service, our silence. What happens when we stop being silent? The room fell quiet, everyone considering the implications. Then from the back of the group, someone started clapping. Slowly others joined in until the ballroom thundered with applause. Not for Nina alone, but for themselves, for the possibility that their work might finally be valued, their voices might finally be heard. "This is beautiful," Aiko said. "But we have a practical problem. The signing is in 5 hours. Nina hasn't slept, hasn't eaten, and frankly looks like she might collapse at any moment." She was right. Nina could feel exhaustion pulling at her like gravity, making her thoughts fuzzy and her legs unsteady. "There's a suite upstairs," Hartwell offered. "The penthouse. You can rest, shower, prepare for tomorrow." "I can't afford—" "It's yours, part of your new position. And Ms. Vaugh," he addressed Lillian, "there's a second suite available for you as well, until you find permanent arrangements." "This is too much," Nina protested. "No," Takahashi said firmly. "This is exactly enough. You've been living on minimum wage for 6 months to prove a point. The point is proven. Now accept the resources you need to create change." As they moved toward the elevator, Rita caught Nina's arm. "There's something you should know. Rex Dalton. He wasn't working alone. I heard him on the phone earlier before everything exploded. Someone was feeding him information, someone inside the hotel. Who? I don't know. But be careful. Not everyone wants things to change." The penthouse suite was everything Nina's studio apartment in Queens wasn't: 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a kitchen larger than her entire previous living space. But what struck her most was the silence. After months of thin walls and street noise, the quiet felt almost oppressive. Lillian stood by the windows looking out at the city lights. "Your father and I had a suite like this once. During our honeymoon, he promised me the world." She laughed bitterly. "He delivered. He just never mentioned the world would be a cage." "Mom, what are you going to do?" "Really do? I don't know. I'm 51, about to be divorced with no work experience except charity galas and looking appropriate at business dinners." "You ran those charities. You managed million-dollar budgets, coordinated international events, negotiated with vendors and donors." "That's not real work?" "That's exactly what I thought about housekeeping," Nina interrupted. "Until I learned that every job requires skills, intelligence, dignity. You have abilities, Mom. You just need to reframe them." Lillian turned from the window. "When did you become so wise? Sometime between scrubbing toilets and translating for billionaires." They both laughed, real laughter, free from the performance their family had always required. Nina's phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but this time she recognized the area code, Tokyo. "Moshi, Moshi." The voice that answered made her sink onto the plush sofa. It was Kenji, her study partner from Keio University, the boy who'd asked her to stay in Tokyo to build a life there together. "Nina-chan, I've been watching the news. You're everywhere, NHK Asahi. Even my grandmother knows your name now." "Kenji, I'm flying to New York tonight. I land in 14 hours. "What? Why?" "Because what you did tonight is what I should have done years ago, stood up to my father, chosen my own path. I've been working for his company, dying slowly, in a suit I hate, and watching you tonight. Nina, you showed me it's possible to choose differently." "Kenji, this isn't the right time." "There's never a right time for revolution. You taught me that tonight." After he hung up, Nina sat staring at her phone. The past was rushing toward her as fast as the future, and she wasn't sure she was ready for either. "Old boyfriend?" Lillian asked gently. "Old possibility. One I thought I'd closed." "Nothing's ever really closed, Nina. Sometimes we just need distance to see doors we thought were walls." A knock interrupted them. Nina opened the door to find Aiko holding a garment bag and a laptop. "For tomorrow," she said, entering without invitation. "You can't sign a $1 billion deal in a housekeeping uniform." Why not? It's what I was wearing when I earned it. Because symbols matter. You've proven you don't need the costume of power. Now you need to prove you can wear it without letting it wear you. She unzipped the bag, revealing a suit that managed to be both professional and somehow revolutionary. The cut was classic, but the color was the exact shade of blue as the hotel's housekeeping uniforms. It's perfect, Nina breathed. It should be. I had it made months ago. Months ago? But how did you know? I didn't know it would be you specifically. But I knew someone would eventually stand up, speak out, break through. I've had suits made in various sizes waiting for the moment. Aiko smiled. Takahashi thinks he orchestrated tonight, but he only provided the stage. You provided the performance. It wasn't a performance. No, it was better. It was truth. And truth, Ms. Va, is the most dangerous force in the corporate world. Aiko set up the laptop on the dining table. Now we need to prepare for tomorrow. The contracts are more complex than what was discussed tonight. There are provisions, subsections, requirements that could be weaponized if we're not careful. I need sleep. You need preparation. Sleep is optional. Being ready is not. They worked for 3 hours, going through every line of the contract. Nina's eyes burned and her brain felt wrapped in cotton, but she pushed through. This was what her father had never understood. Real work wasn't about talent or connections or luck. It was about continuing when continuation seemed impossible. There, Nina pointed at a clause buried on page 47. That's a poison pill. If we don't meet the employment targets within 6 months, they can dissolve the entire partnership and keep the technology. Good catch. We'll need to renegotiate that. No, Nina said slowly, an idea forming. We keep it, but we add a mirror clause. If they don't meet their training commitments, we keep their initial investment and all developed infrastructure. Aiko raised an eyebrow. That's aggressive. It's balanced. Mutual risk, mutual reward. If we're really partners, both sides should have equal skin in the game. You're learning fast. I've been learning for 6 months. Tonight just gave me the chance to show it. By 5 in the morning, they'd been through the entire contract twice. Nina's additions and modifications filled 12 pages of notes. Her head felt like it might explode, but her understanding was crystal clear. You should rest, Aiko finally said. At least for an hour. Nina nodded, but as Aiko left, she found herself unable to sleep. Instead, she stood at the window watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, Miguel was probably starting his morning shift. Rita was preparing for her first day as food and beverage director. Her father was in federal custody. Her mother was asleep in the next room, free for the first time in decades. And somewhere flying across the Pacific was a piece of her past she'd thought she'd left behind. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed the hotel's front desk. Ms. Va, there's a situation in the lobby. We need you down here immediately. Nina threw on yesterday's clothes and took the elevator down. The lobby was packed, not with reporters this time, but with hotel workers. Hundreds of them from this hotel, and others all holding signs, Dignity in Labor, Worth Beyond Wages, the Nina Va Accord. At the front of the crowd stood someone Nina didn't expect, Cheryl Kwan, out on bail. Her usual perfect appearance replaced by disheveled hair and a wrinkled suit. This is your fault, Cheryl snarled when she saw Nina. All of it. I spent 15 years climbing the ladder, and you destroyed it in one night. You destroyed yourself, Nina replied calmly. I just made it visible. You think you've won. You have no idea what you've started. Every hotel in this city, every service business, they're all connected. You've made enemies you can't even imagine. Good. Change doesn't come from making friends with the status quo. Cheryl stepped close enough that Nina could smell the alcohol on her breath. They'll destroy you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they'll find a way. A maid doesn't get to win. I'm not a maid, Nina said clearly, her voice carrying across the lobby. I'm a human being who happened to work as a maid. Just like you're a human being who happened to work as a manager. The only difference is I never forgot the human part. The crowd erupted in cheers. Cheryl's face contorted with rage, and for a moment Nina thought she might actually attack. But then security was there escorting Cheryl out, while she screamed threats that became increasingly incoherent. You okay? Rita appeared at Nina's elbow. I don't know. She's right about one thing. I have no idea what I've started. None of us do, but that's what makes it revolutionary. Thomas Hartwell approached through the crowd. The boardroom is ready. The other parties are arriving. It's time. Nina looked at the crowd of workers all watching her with expressions of hope and expectation. The weight of their dreams felt heavier than any tray she'd ever carried. Give me 10 minutes, she said. She returned to the penthouse, showered quickly, and put on Aiko's suit. Looking in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. The woman staring back looked confident, powerful, ready to reshape the world. But when she looked closer, she could still see the housekeeper in her eyes, the one who'd learned that every person's work has dignity. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every human being has worth beyond their utility to others. Ready? Lillian asked from the doorway. No, Nina admitted, but I'm going anyway. They rode the elevator to the boardroom floor. As the doors opened, Nina could hear voices, dozens of executives, lawyers, consultants, all here to witness or challenge what was about to happen. Wait, Miguel's voice called out. He was running down the hallway, still in his server's uniform. Nina, there's something you need to know. I just heard from my cousin, the one your father evicted. The FBI found something in your father's papers, a contract from 3 years ago. What kind of contract? A trust fund, in your name, hidden offshore. $20 million. Nina's blood went cold. What? He was using your identity for tax evasion. If you sign anything today, you could be implicated. The boardroom doors were opening. Takahashi was waiting inside. The future of thousands of workers hung in the balance, and Nina had just discovered that her father's crimes might destroy everything before it could begin. Nina's hand froze on the boardroom door handle. $20 million in an offshore account with her name on it, her father's final trap, even from federal custody. Miguel stood beside her, his face etched with worry, while Lillian gripped her daughter's shoulder. We have to tell them, Miguel urged. If you sign anything without disclosing this... I know. Nina's mind raced through possibilities, each more catastrophic than the last. But if I tell them now, the deal dies. No one will risk partnering with someone under federal investigation. Through the glass doors, she could see Takahashi checking his watch. The room was full, at least 50 people, all waiting for the maid who'd turned their world upside down to prove she could follow through. There's another option, Aiko said, appearing from the stairwell with her tablet and a phone pressed to her ear. I've been talking to my contact at the FBI. They've been tracking that account for 2 years. They know you had no knowledge of it. That won't matter to the board, Nina said. The appearance of impropriety is enough to kill everything. Unless we make it part of the story. Aiko's eyes gleamed with something like admiration. You go in there and disclose it yourself. Full transparency. Show them that even when your father tries to destroy you from a jail cell, you choose honesty. That's insane, Lillian protested. They'll eat her alive. Or they'll see her as incorruptible, Aiko countered. Someone who values truth over advantage, even when the advantage is $20 million. Nina looked through the glass again. Rita was in there, having somehow talked her way into the meeting. So were several other hotel workers standing along the walls like witnesses to history. Their presence decided her. "I'm going in." She pushed open the doors, and the room fell silent. Every eye tracked her movement as she walked to the podium they'd set up for the signing. The suit Aiko had given her felt like armor, but Nina knew that what came next would require more than clothing could provide. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. "Before we proceed, there's something I need to disclose." Takahashi's expression didn't change, but she saw his hand tighten slightly on his pen. "5 minutes ago, I learned that my father established an offshore account in my name containing $20 million apparently for tax evasion purposes. I had no knowledge of this account until this moment. The FBI has confirmed my ignorance, but I understand if this revelation changes your willingness to proceed." The room exploded. Lawyers huddled with their clients' phones appeared like weapons, and several board members stood to leave. "This is exactly what we expected," one executive announced. "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." "Sit down, Morrison," Takahashi said quietly, but his voice carried absolute authority. "Let her finish." Nina pulled out her phone, showing the FBI agent's contact information. "Agent Dawson is standing by to confirm that I'm not under investigation, that I've been cooperating fully, and that the account has already been frozen as part of my father's case." "That's not the point," Morrison insisted. "The optics alone—" "The optics," Nina interrupted, "are that when faced with a choice between $20 million and truth, I chose truth. When faced with staying silent and hoping no one found out, I chose disclosure. If that's not the kind of leadership you want in this partnership, then we shouldn't be partners. You're gambling everything on principle." Another board member asked incredulously. "I'm building everything on principle. The same principle that made me step forward last night when Takahashi-san needed translation. The same principle that made me report wage theft even though it cost me my job. The same principle that says workers deserve dignity, wages deserve to match worth, and lies deserve to be exposed, no matter who tells them." "Pretty words," Morrison sneered, "but $20 million. Is my father's prison not mine?" Nina walked to the whiteboard and wrote the number in large digits. $20 million. That's what my silence would have been worth. But silence is what allowed my father to exploit tenants for decades. Silence is what let Cheryl abuse workers for years. Silence is what keeps millions of service workers invisible and underpaid. She turned back to the room. "I'm done being silent. The question is whether you're ready to hear what noise sounds like." Takahashi stood slowly. "I need 5 minutes with my team." The room began to empty, people clustering in the hallway for hushed, urgent conversations. Nina found herself standing alone at the window, watching the city 60 floors below. Each building contained thousands of workers like her, invisible to the people they served, essential to the world that ignored them. "That was brave," Rita said, joining her. "Stupid, maybe, but brave. What's the difference anymore? Brave changes things. Stupid just gets you fired." "I might be both." "Yeah, but you'll be both with integrity." Before Nina could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but something about the international prefix made her answer. "Nina Vo." The voice was crisp, British, authoritative. "This is Margaret Chen from the International Labor Organization. We've been monitoring your situation. If Takahashi Industries withdraws, we're prepared to offer you a position documenting labor practices globally. The work you've started doesn't have to end here." "I appreciate that, but the position comes with diplomatic immunity, a team of researchers, and the backing of the United Nations. Think about it." The line went dead. Nina stared at her phone, wondering how many safety nets were appearing even as she felt like she was falling. "They're ready," Aiko announced from the doorway. Nina walked back into the boardroom to find it transformed. Half the executives were gone, But in their place were workers not just from the hotel, but from buildings across the city. Someone had opened the doors, turned the private signing into a public moment. Takahashi stood at the podium. "We've made our decision. The deal proceeds with one modification." Nina's heart sank. Here it came. The reduction in worker protections, the dilution of everything they'd fought for. "The $20 million, Takahashi continued, will be redirected when the FBI releases it. Not to you, not to us, but to the worker training program. It seems appropriate that money stolen from workers should return to them." "You can't do that," Morrison protested. "That money is evidence. That money is opportunity," Takahashi corrected. "And Ms. Va has already agreed to sign it over, haven't you?" Nina hadn't, but she understood the test. "Of course, every penny." "You're giving away $20 million, a reporter who'd somehow snuck in shouted. "I'm investing in 20 million possibilities," Nina replied. "Each dollar represents a worker who could learn a new skill, support their family, build their future. That's worth more than any personal fortune." "This is insanity," Morrison stood up. "I'm pulling our fund out of this deal." "Then go," Takahashi said simply. "We don't need investors who see workers as costs rather than assets." Morrison stormed out, followed by 3 other executives. But for everyone who left, Nina noticed 2 more workers slipping in, drawn by live streams and word of mouth to witness something unprecedented. "Should we proceed with the signing?" Thomas Hartwell asked. "Wait," a voice called from the back. Nina's blood chilled. She knew that voice. William Vaugh entered, flanked by 2 federal marshals. He was in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, but his presence still commanded attention. Behind him was a woman in a severe suit, carrying a briefcase that screamed expensive lawyer. "What is he doing here?" Lillian gasped. "Mr. Vaugh has agreed to cooperate fully with our investigation," one of the marshals explained. "He requested to address this gathering as part of his cooperation agreement." "I have something to say," William announced, his voice carrying the authority of decades of dominance despite his chains. "You have nothing to say that we want to hear," Nina replied. "Not even if it's about the other account." The room went silent. Nina felt the floor seem to shift beneath her feet. "What other account?" William's smile was cold, triumphant, despite his circumstances. "You didn't think 20 million was all of it, did you? There's another account. 50 million. Also in your name. Also hidden. But this one," his smile widened, "this one has transactions, payments to city officials, building inspectors, judges, all traceable to you." "That's impossible. I never—" "Digital signatures are easy to fake when you have someone's information from birth." William looked at his daughter with something like pride. "I made you complicit in everything. Every bribe, every payoff, every crime. You can cooperate with the FBI, give away 20 million, play the hero. But when they find the second account, you'll be finished." Nina felt the room spinning. Everything she'd built, everything she'd fought for, crumbling because of her father's vindictive planning. "Unless," William continued, "you walk away, right now, leave the deal, leave the city, leave the country, disappear, and the account disappears with you. You're trying to blackmail her into exile." Takahashi's voice was deadly quiet. "I'm offering her a choice, prison or paradise. She can afford paradise with 50 million. "That's your problem, Father," Nina said, finding her voice. "You think everything is about affording things." Yet she pulled out her phone and did something that made everyone in the room lean forward. She called the FBI agent, directly putting him on speaker. "Agent Dawson. This is Nina Vaugh. My father just disclosed a second fraudulent account in my name containing $50 million and evidence of bribery. I'm reporting it now in front of witnesses and requesting immediate investigation." Ms. Vaugh, the agent's voice crackled through the speaker. Are you certain you want to do this publicly? Transparency is the only currency I'm interested in anymore. William's face went white. You stupid girl, you're destroying yourself. No, I'm refusing to be your weapon against myself. Nina turned to address the room. He's right about one thing, there will be an investigation. It might take months to clear my name. During that time, I'll be toxic to any business dealing. So I'm withdrawing from the Takahashi partnership. Nina, no, Rita protested. But, Nina continued, I'm not disappearing. I'll stay here, cooperate fully, and prove the truth is stronger than any lie, no matter how well funded. That's noble, Morrison said from the doorway, where he'd paused to watch the drama. But nobility doesn't pay bills. Actually, it does. The voice came from the crowd of workers. A woman stepped forward, someone Nina recognized from the night shift, a cleaner named Keiko. I've been saving for 10 years. I have $30,000. I'm investing it in whatever Nina does next. That's ridiculous, Morrison started. I have $15,000, Miguel announced. My engineering fund, it's hers. $5,000, another worker called out. $8,000 here. One by one, workers pledged their savings. Not huge amounts, but everything to them. Within minutes, they'd pledged nearly $500,000. This is insane, William said. You're trusting a maid with your life savings. We're trusting someone who gave up $20 million for principal, Keiko replied. How much principal have you ever shown Mr. Vaugh? Takahashi raised his hand for silence. Ms. Vaugh, you're withdrawing from our partnership. I have to. You can't afford the liability. Perhaps not, but I can afford something else. He turned to Aiko. The foundation we discussed. Aiko smiled. The Yamamoto Foundation for Worker Dignity. Fully funded, independently operated, dedicated to advancing labor rights globally. It needs a director, Takahashi continued. Someone with unquestionable integrity, proven courage, and the ability to bridge worlds. The position wouldn't be connected to Takahashi Industries, so no liability. Interested. Nina felt tears burning her eyes. You planned this. I planned for possibilities. You created the moment. The salary is modest, Aiko added. $200,000 annually. But the impact would be, I'll take it. You haven't heard the conditions. I don't care about conditions. I care about continuing. William laughed bitterly. You're choosing $200,000 over $50 million. I'm choosing purpose over profit, something you never understood. The federal marshals stepped forward. Mr. Vaugh, it's time to go. As they led him toward the door, William turned back one last time. You'll regret this, Nina. When you're old, when you realize you could have had everything, I already have everything that matters, Nina replied. I have people who believe in me for who I am, not what I can give them. I have work that means something beyond profit margins. I have the knowledge that when I had to choose between easy and right, I chose right. William's response was lost as the marshals dragged him away. The moment the doors closed behind him, the room erupted. Workers hugged each other. Lawyers scrambled to draft new documents, and reporters who'd been live streaming tried to process what they'd witnessed. We still need to sign the original partnership agreement, Thomas Hartwell reminded everyone. The hotel's commitment to worker training remains unchanged. The signing itself felt anticlimactic after everything that had preceded it. Nina watched as Takahashi and the remaining board members signed documents that would change thousands of lives. She wasn't signing anything, her name wouldn't be on the official papers, but everyone knew she was the reason they existed. Ms. Vaugh, a reporter pushed forward. How does it feel to have given up $70 million in one morning? Nina thought about the question. How did it feel? Like freedom. Like flying. Like finally becoming the person she'd always been, but had been too afraid to show. It feels like the beginning, she said simply. The beginning of what? Before she could answer, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Kenji's number. He was supposed to still be in the air, but, Nina, I'm at JFK. My flight landed early. I'm coming to you. Kenji, wait. I saw everything. The live stream, your father, the money, all of it. You were magnificent. I was just myself. Exactly. That's what was magnificent. She ended the call to find everyone staring at her. Old friend, she explained weakly. The one you studied with in Tokyo, Lillian asked. How did you mothers know things, even absent mothers? Before Nina could respond, Aiko approached with a tablet. We need to discuss the foundation. There are decisions to make, staff to hire, programs to design. Can it wait an hour? I need to process, Rita suggested. Breathe. Realize you just changed the world. Clean out my locker, Nina finished. I still technically work here for another 2 hours. Everyone stared at her. You're serious? Takahashi asked. I started a shift 6 months ago. I'd like to finish it. She left the boardroom and took the service elevator to the basement. Her locker was exactly as she'd left it the night before: spare uniform, comfortable shoes, the notebook she'd carried everywhere. She began emptying it slowly, each item a memory of the person she'd been just 24 hours ago. Need help? Miguel appeared in the doorway. I'm good. No, you're great. But that's different. They stood in comfortable silence while Nina finished packing. As she closed the locker for the last time, she found herself unexpectedly emotional. 6 months, she said. 6 months of being invisible taught me more than 3 years of being exceptional. You were never invisible to us, Miguel said. We saw you. We just knew you were hiding from something. I was hiding from everything. And now I'm done hiding. They walked back to the elevator together. As the doors opened, Nina was surprised to find it full of workers, Rita, Keiko, and at least a dozen others. Going up? Rita asked with a grin. Where? The roof. We're having a celebration. The hotel that treated us like furniture now has to treat us like humans. That deserves champagne. Stolen champagne? Nina asked. Donated, Thomas Hartwell said, appearing behind them with a case of Dom Perignon. A small gesture toward a large debt. They crowded into the elevator, rising through the building that had been Nina's entire world for 6 months. Each floor held memories, confrontations with Cheryl, quiet moments of dignity with Rita, small victories that had prepared her for the large one. The roof was glorious in morning sunlight. Someone had brought speakers, and music drifted across the space. Workers from every department gathered, sharing stories of the night that had changed everything. Speech, someone called out. Nina shook her head. I've talked enough. Then dance, Rita suggested as the music shifted to something with a Latin beat. I don't know how. You didn't know how to change the world either, but you figured it out. Before Nina could protest, she was pulled into the crowd. For the first time in months, maybe years, she let herself just be. Not the perfect daughter, not the invisible maid, not the unlikely hero. Just Nina dancing badly on a roof with people who'd become family when her real family had become strangers. Nina, Lillian's voice cut through the music. Someone's here for you. She turned to find Kenji standing in the doorway, still in the clothes he'd worn on the flight. He looked exhausted, but radiant, his eyes fixed on her like she was the only person on the roof. Kenji, don't say anything. Just let me look at you. The woman who turned down $70 million for principal. The woman who stood up to her father and won. The woman who made me realize I've been a coward my entire life. You're not a coward. I am. But I'm done being one. He dropped to one knee, and Nina's heart stopped. I'm not proposing. Not yet. But I'm declaring, in front of all these witnesses, I'm going to earn the right to stand beside you, however long it takes. Kenji, get up? Nina laughed, pulling him to his feet. We don't need grand gestures. No, but we need honest ones. And honestly, I've loved you since you corrected Professor Yamamoto's translation in our first class. That was incredibly rude of me. That was incredibly brave of you, just like everything else you've done. Before Nina could respond, Aiko appeared with her ever-present tablet. I hate to interrupt, but we have a situation. The video of your father's confession has gone beyond viral. The SEC is opening investigations into 12 major real estate firms. The mayor's calling for emergency housing reforms. And, she paused, the president wants to meet you. The president of what? The United States Nina. She wants to meet the maid who started a revolution. Nina looked around the roof at Miguel practicing his engineering equations on a napkin, at Rita, teaching younger workers the dignity in service, at her mother talking to Keiko about medical school applications at Kenji, still staring at her like she'd hung the moon. Tell the president I'm busy today, but tomorrow, Nina smiled, tomorrow I'm free to change the world. You already have, Takahashi said, joining them with a glass of champagne. The question now is what world you'll build next. Nina took the offered glass, raising it to catch the light. The bubbles rose like tiny rebellions, each one breaking the surface to release something into the air. A world where work has dignity, where service has honor, where every person who keeps society running is seen, valued, heard. That's a big dream, Kenji said. I used to have small dreams. They required me to be less than I was. Big dreams just require me to be everything I am. And what are you? Lillian asked, putting her arm around her daughter. Nina thought about the question. What was she? Not a maid anymore, not quite an executive, not her father's daughter, not yet whoever she was becoming. I'm proof, she said finally. Proof that the distance between invisible and invaluable is just one person willing to speak. Proof that power isn't about position, but about purpose. Proof that sometimes the maid really does know Japanese. They all laughed, and in that laughter, Nina heard the future messy, uncertain but bright with possibility. As the sun climbed higher over Manhattan, warming the roof where workers danced and dignity celebrated itself, Nina Vaugh stood at the center of her chosen family and knew that she'd finally found her way home. Not to a place, but to a purpose. Not to comfort, but to courage. The revolution had started with a billionaire's rage and a housekeeper's response. But it would continue with every worker who'd watched that exchange and realized their voice mattered, their labor had value, their dignity was non-negotiable. Ready for tomorrow? Rita asked. No? Nina admitted, then smiled. But readiness is overrated. Sometimes you just have to step forward and trust that the ground will rise to meet you. And if it doesn't, then you learn to fly. The music swelled, the city hummed below, and somewhere in the distance, church bells were ringing noon. A new day was officially beginning, and Nina Vaugh, former maid, current revolutionary, future unknown, was ready to meet it. She'd lost a father, but gained a family. Lost millions, but gained meaning. Lost invisibility, but gained influence. And in the end, wasn't that the best trade of all? The story that had begun with a shattered champagne flute and a billionaire's fury ended with plastic cups and workers' joy. The transformation was complete. But the real work, the work of building the world Nina had glimpsed from her position along the wall, was just beginning. As the celebration continued around her, Nina pulled out her phone and opened a new document. At the top, she typed, "The Dignity Protocols, a blueprint for worker justice." "Starting already?" Kenji asked, reading over her shoulder. The moment never waits for ready, Nina replied, thinking of Professor Yamamoto's words. It only waits for willing. And Nina Vaugh, who'd found her voice in the space between two languages, her power in the gap between two worlds, her purpose in the bridge between two truths, was finally fully, freely willing. The maid had spoken Japanese. The world had listened. And nothing would ever be the same.